friend on this longtime member of this committee, and our friend Tom Buford, Senator Tom Buford, and his tragic, untimely passing because of also the tragedy of Bam Carney passing. We had to reschedule this meeting to today, and so unfortunately, I can't be with you personally, and I really regret that. I know Jason Hall, the vice chair from the Senate in this committee, he also regrets that. Hopefully he'll be on in a little while. He's tied up in court, hearing that he couldn't miss. But I know I speak for him also when I speak. The first thing I'd like to do, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, is ask our Chief of Staff, Mr. Tom Hewlett, to read the resolution. Then I'd like to speak to it.
Yes, sir.
A resolution adjourning the Interim Joint Committee on Licensing, Occupations, and Administrative Regulations in honor and loving memory of Senator Tom Buford. Whereas Senator Tom Buford was born in Lexington, Kentucky on May 23, 1949, and whereas Senator Tom Buford was first elected to the Kentucky Senate in November 1991 and has honorably served the people of the 22nd District and the Commonwealth at large continuously since that time, and whereas Senator Tom Buford has served on the Senate Standing Committee on Licensing and Occupations continuously since his appointment in March 1994, and has also served on several other Senate standing committees, including Appropriations and Revenue and Banking and Insurance, as well as many other interim committees and legislative appointments throughout the years. And whereas Senator Tom Buford was beloved amongst his fellow committee members for his humor, wit, joy for life, and love of the state legislature, and whereas Senator Tom Buford was admired by his colleagues for his intellect, institutional knowledge, and his ability to distill complex matters down to their core issues, and whereas Senator Tom Buford was dedicated to philanthropic causes such as the Special Olympics and the protection of animals from abuse, and whereas Senator Tom Buford was an ardent advocate for his constituents, sponsoring numerous pieces of legislation to benefit them and the Commonwealth as a whole, and whereas Senator Tom Buford departed this life on July 6, 2021, leaving his family, friends, colleagues, and community in solemn mourning. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Interim Joint Committee on Licensing, Occupations, and Administrative Regulations of the Legislative Research Commission of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. The members of the Interim Joint Committee on Licensing, Occupations, and Administrative Regulations honor the life, achievements, and public service of Senator Tom Buford. And the members of the Interim Joint Committee on Licensing, Occupations, and Administrative Regulations express their profound sympathies upon the passing of Senator Buford and extend their heartfelt condolences to his family, friends, colleagues, and community. And when the Legislative Interim Joint Committee on Licensing, Occupations, and Administrative Regulations adjourns this day, July 26, 2021, it does so in honor and loving memory of our friend and colleague, Senator Tom Buford.
All right, we're going to yield back to Senator or Co-Chair Schickel for some comments, and then to Senator Thayer for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chief of Staff Tom Hewlett, for reading the resolution. And I think the resolution speaks well to his accomplishments and how well he was thought of in the Kentucky State Senate. I want to make just a couple personal reflections on my friend Tom Buford, because Tom was a very unique individual. I had the honor of sitting with him in the back row with Jared Carpenter, myself and him in the back row for the last several years in the Kentucky State Senate. And Jared and I, we've talked on the phone probably half a dozen times since his passing. And both of us agree that those conversations that we had with him during those years, and going to lunch and dinner with him, and he actually came over to the house a couple of times where I live in Frankfort and had dinner. Those conversations were some of the most enlightening and best conversations we had as far as learning about the institution of the Kentucky State Senate. Tom had a way of using humor to defuse tension. Whenever there was an argument or a disagreement, the first thing that would always happen, we even saw that on this committee, didn't we, Mr. Chairman, where he would always have some sort of one-liner. And just so recently, the last meeting I chaired, he was on remotely, very much engaged in the conversation. So we learned a lot from him that way. He also had a very human side. I'll never forget, at a conference, I went out and had a cocktail with him, just me and him, one time late at night. And he was sharing the story about how when his mother died, that his mother made great cornbread, and she would make it in a cast iron skillet. And that cast iron skillet was hanging on the wall in her kitchen. And when his mother died, he had to go and get that skillet and put it in his home. And that was always so hard for him to do. And to this day, when he sees that skillet, he gets teared up about his mother. Tom also had a very human side, in that if Jared, Senator Carpenter, or myself was out of the chamber, or something would happen that we had missed, he would always make sure that we were up to date. He didn't want anybody, but he didn't want us as friends to be blindsided about anything. Even if he disagreed with you on an issue, he always made sure that you were cast in the best possible light in your position. And the legislator learns to appreciate those kind of things over the years. So Tom was a friend, a dear friend. He had been with us many years. His passing was very untimely, and I really regret that we can't honor him more publicly. But I just think he was just a terrific guy, and we extend our sincere sympathy to his family and his children and his grandchildren, who I know he loved very, very much. And at this time, I will yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Thayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the chairs for bringing this resolution forward today. Chairman Schickel's words were perfect, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that. You know, it's been just an absolutely brutal month for us here in Frankfort. Losing two members, Senator Buford and Bam Carney, in 1 month. I've been here 18 and a half years, and we've never lost two in a year. And of course, Tom, being the unique individual he is, didn't want a funeral. And so we haven't had that opportunity like we did last week with Representative Carney to say goodbye. When I came in the Senate, I was the young punk kid. I think I was 34 years old. And I knew Tom and I were going to be simpatico right from the start. The first week of the session, I voted yes on one of his alcohol bills. And it was a bill that allowed wedding caterers to serve alcohol in dry counties, which seemed like a pretty reasonable thing to me. I voted for Tom's bill and immediately got yelled at by two older members of the caucus who claimed I wasn't conservative enough. So I was like, thanks a lot, Buford. But then also later that session, he and I worked together on a bill that made it a felony on second offense to intentionally torture a cat or dog. And by the way, now it's a felony on first offense. We've gone one step further with Romeo's Law. But that was a really hard bill to get passed. Back then, it split our Republican caucus right down the middle. Matter of fact, for pushing so hard for it, I was called a young whippersnapper by an older, now retired member of our caucus. And I wish someone would call me a young whippersnapper now. But the thing about Buford is he always fought for those animal welfare bills. And he also always supported our signature industries. And that's important to this committee. Those signature industries, of course, are horse racing and bourbon. And my last memory of Tom, and I'm glad several of us had this, was that day at Keeneland back in April. And I took him and Senator Nemes and Senator Howell down to the paddock to meet Johnny Velasquez. And, you know, if you know Johnny V, he's a great personality, a great ambassador for horse racing. And we got to talk to him before and after the race, which he won. And then, of course, he won the Kentucky Derby, at least so far. We'll see how that all plays out. And Tom was so excited that he got to meet and get his picture taken with the jockey who won the Kentucky Derby. And he never lost his joy for life, his zest for living. And one of my favorite Bufordisms was when a controversial bill would get to the floor of the Senate, he'd say, "I'm going to vote no and hope it passes." That's Buford. Vote no, hope it passes. So I'll never forget Tom, and his untimely death is something we're all going to cope with for a long time. Big shoes to fill, and Senator Schickel, the back row of the Senate chamber, will never be the same. And if it's in order, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move for the adoption of the resolution honoring Senator Buford.
It is in order. Motion made. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, as a Democratic senator, may I have just a few brief words, please?
Would you like to second this motion, Senator Thomas?
Yes, I would like to second this motion and then make a few brief comments in support of.
We have a motion and a second. Quick discussion on the motion, Senator Thomas.
Well, no discussion, other than say that Tom was such a kind-hearted and warm individual. In our line of work, as Senator Schickel and Senator Thayer has pointed out, there's sometimes can be some harsh disagreements and some hard feelings. But Tom always believed that we can disagree without being disagreeable, and that respect was the cornerstone of how we should always conduct ourselves. And he was just a man of such high integrity. And I just thought so much of him and just had such immense respect for Tom as a legislator. He was the ideal legislator, and someone who I certainly strive to emulate, as a statesman, not a politician. So he will be missed by all of us. His passing is a great loss to us, and Tom will always be a treasure in the Senate, so long as it is an august body here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Thank you, Senator Thomas, and I agree with the disagree without being disagreeable. We need more of that in this country, not less. So, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We appreciate all those kind words. Let the members know that we have the hard copy resolution up here for those of you in person would like to sign it. You're welcome to do so. And let me just say a few words. First of all, we won't call you whippersnapper, but young punk perhaps.
I'll take it.
That's my attempt to interject some Buford lightheartedness here in the meeting today. Senator Buford was here for over 30 years, and he spent all those years on this committee and its predecessor, the Business Occupations and Professions Committee. And when you show up here in the early 90s, as Senator Thomas said, he was a man of high integrity. And, when you show up and be on that committee at that time and you didn't get caught up in what happened then yes, you did have a high level of integrity. So we appreciate that. I'm also going to take a minute or two to recognize, although not a member of this committee, Representative Carney in his passing. A terrible event. You have to look at not only his sterling legislative record, but the fact that he fought for nearly 20 months at a time, especially last year when his family wasn't even allowed to come see him for 5 months. He showed an amazing spirit. Like I said, legislative accomplishments. He was elected to leadership twice. So clearly, I know the guy he beat pretty well both times, and that just shows how a remarkably good politician he was. We appreciate his service and his family, who was with him the entire way. And I think most, if not all of us, got to go and see this week, and they had a terrific spirit. So anyway, all that out of the way here, we're going to get started on the agenda. We're going to move around a little bit, and we are going to start with Anith Sanford with the State Home Builders, as she has, I believe, a conference or a meeting or something, and everyone's schedule's upended. She's going to give us a little brief update on what's going on with the housing industry in Kentucky. And Ms. Sanford, the floor is yours.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chairman Koenig and to Chairman Schickel, members of the committee, thank you for having me here today to present a very brief overview of residential construction here in Kentucky. My name is Anita Sanford, and I am the Chief Executive Officer for the Home Builders Association of Kentucky. Many of you may have known my predecessor, Bob Weiss, who represented the association very well for 35 years. The Home Builders Association, we are a 4,700 member company organization representing over 40,000 employees from across the Commonwealth. A third of our membership are actually builders and remodelers, and the remaining members are basically those that help serve the industry as well. We are affiliated with the National Association of Home Builders, and we are also affiliated with 20 local associations from across the state. Many of you may refer to them as the BIAs in some areas or the local Home Builders Association. We also, our basic mission that we do is to focus on having a voice in the legislative and regulatory environment here in Kentucky while we strive to, of course, build the American dream for all people. Now I'm just going to share a brief, I believe you all may have it in your packet, overview of the actual impact of housing here in the Commonwealth, and I think it's extremely significant. When 100 new homes are actually built here, there is $28.7 million in income that's generated, $3.6 million in taxes and fees for local and state government, as well as almost 400 jobs that are created. And of course, when you go even further, multiply that to 1,000 homes per year, we're generating even more income and fees for local government and well over 3,000 jobs per year. And our members are very proud of that. As you can see, and as I mentioned before, another impact that we have as far as the economy is not just new homes. That's not the only thing we do. We also do remodeling, which is also extremely significant as far as the economy goes. And on that document that we've shared with you, we've also shared many of the industries that are affected. We actually shared very few. There are even more. Plumbers, electricians, HVAC, designers, architects, engineers, and all the suppliers that help supply the industry, whether it be lighting, lumber, all of those industries. I'd also like to just give you a brief overview of kind of where we have been over the years in new home construction, and then of course where we are today. If you look back over the past 15 years, in 2005, here in Kentucky, we actually built close to 18,000 new homes. And then as many of you are aware, the recession did hit, and we went down to less than 6,000 homes per year that were being built here in Kentucky. The economy, of course, began to recover, and as of last year, we were up to 12,000 homes that were built, even during the pandemic, as the industry was considered an essential service. As we look over the years, it looks like our average for home building is about 9,600 homes per year. And then, of course, here we are today. There's been a 25% increase. We're already up 1,300 more homes today. That's as of the end of May than we were last year in 2020. Although we've seen an increase in construction, there's still many obstacles that our members face. I'm sure you all are very aware of the lumber prices. Thankfully, they are beginning to trickle down. But just to give you an example, I have a member who they've developed a subdivision in Jessamine County, and the home that he built in early last year, the lumber package was $40,000. And now he's building a slightly smaller home in that same subdivision, and the lumber package went up to $88,000. So it more than doubled. Another thing that you may see some of our members doing, I know we have a couple of our members that build around some of the lakes here, And they are basically telling their customers, please come back and see us in the spring, just because it's so difficult right now to truly price a home. Not just lumber, but then of course all of the supplies. There is a shortage with that as well. And then another obstacle I guess I could say that we've had is workforce. And that was an obstacle for our industry prior to the pandemic. And our members value those that are out in the workforce. We even have two local associations, which I know Chairman Koenig and Chairman Schickel will be very familiar with, the Building Institute in Northern Kentucky, and then the Building Institute in Lexington. These are two privately funded by our members schools to help address the workforce concerns that we have had over the years. They do certifications across the board from plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and then they also do welding. They even go as far as doing carpentry classes. Of course, that's very significant in our industry, and many more classes. And so our members partake in these type of programs and even work in schools as well, because they know these people will be their future employees. So basically, that's my presentation. And in closing, I just want you to know that internally, we are planning to work with partners that are part of the industry to really focus on housing affordability across the board. Once we put something together, come out with our final findings, we would be happy to share that with all of you. And I just want you all to know that, one, we thank you all for your continuous support of the industry over the years, and want you to know that we're here and a resource for you when it comes to the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for a few questions, the first of which will come from Representative Bratcher. Who was on remote and texted me and said he had a question. Is there anybody else with questions who? He's having connection issues. Do your members build apartments, and what percentage of what you build are apartments?
I am not aware of the exact percentage, but we do have some members that do like commercial or that build apartments, but I would be happy to get him that number.
Okay, that would be terrific. Representative Gentry, I believe, has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. And I do have a question for Ms. Sanford. It's kind of a general question, Ms. Sanford. Hi, by the way, and thank you for being here. As you know, we have an extreme shortage in affordable housing across the nation, and Kentucky's no exception to that. And home prices have really escalated in recent times, and higher percentages and trends than wages. So it's becoming a bigger issue than even what it already was. Can you talk a little bit about, I know you said that you guys are working on this and will be coming out with a report. Do you know of any strategies to increase affordable housing at the home level in Kentucky that might be appealing by investors or might be going on right now? And if so, can you talk about that a little bit?
There are, of course, I mean, we could go into tax credits. There are different avenues that we could go down. This is one of the reasons, I wish I could give you more of a definitive answer, but why internally we believe that it's time that we put a large group together to actually explore the cost of housing, because our goal with this task force internally will be to literally look at every single dollar that is spent on a home and how can we help drive down that cost. But I'm happy to, again, include you in that process as we move along. This is not an internal group that will just be of builders. We want to include realtors, bankers, city officials, everyone, so we can talk about the future of home building here in Kentucky.
Thank you very much. And I would be happy to help in any way possible. I am involved in real estate investment a little bit. It's a big issue, big problem in Louisville, where I preside. And I urge my colleagues to look at any type of tax credit options that are out there to help stimulate this industry, because there's a big need for it. And anything I can do to help in that process, just let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Gentry. I believe I've actually had a bill on that for a couple of years in the past, so might be time to resurrect it. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Sanford, I have seen studies like this before and know they are absolutely critical in terms of tax revenue generated to state and local governments, and I presume this includes the school boards as well.
I am not sure if that exactly includes the school boards, but I will double check to confirm.
But it's a huge amount of revenue, and to those governments and entities, having new revenue that's what makes the difference between, are they going to have to raise their tax rate? And it's vital that we continue to support development and home construction. And while I'm on my soapbox, we've got to have roads to be able to meet the needs of the new residents, particularly in my district, which is the largest right now district from a population standpoint. And we've got to have roads, i.e. we have to have road money, and we've got to figure out what are we going to do as a state in terms of generating the kind of transportation revenue dollars, road fund dollars, to meet that need. So thank you for your industry and what you all do for all of us.
Thank you.
And brief comment from Senator Thayer.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Anitha, I just want to say congratulations to you on your promotion to CEO. You have big shoes to fill, but I know that you're more than capable of it, and I thought that the home builders made a great decision in elevating you to that role. I wish you the best of luck and look forward to working with you on issues important to your industry for years to come. So congratulations.
Thank you, and I appreciate your support.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate the update. Next on the agenda is Representative Jenkins and her charitable gaming issue. While she and her crowd are coming up, Senator Adams, are you on the line? Representative Flannery, would you like to let your presence be known?
Yes, I'm present virtually from my district.
Excellent, thank you. And Representative Pratt?
Yes, remote out of district, but yes, thanks, sir.
All right, very good. Representative Jenkins, welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Koenig and Chairman Schickel. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I called Chairman Koenig a month ago or so, I guess, and just chatted with him a little bit about charitable gaming and the fact that we passed a law, I think Tom Hewlett can probably correct me, 20 years or so ago. He's kind of nodding a little bit. And I just asked the chairman if it was time just to revisit that law to see if it was working, if it needed any tweaks. I hear on a pretty regular basis from charities and nonprofits around the Louisville area about some of the difficulties they have understanding the law, trying to comply with it, and some of the difficulties that they've had. And certainly technology has changed drastically since we enacted this law. I'm not going to talk to you a whole lot because I have somebody who's done has been extremely successful in raising money for a charity and knows this inside and out. But I know that we all are very appreciative of the charities and how much they help our constituents and our districts and our communities. I want to give a shout out to my friend Ricky Lee Williams, who is battling cancer, and he was interested in hearing more about Mike's charity, Shirley's Way. So I know he's listening in today. So Ricky, good luck on your battle with cancer, and I know you'll find Shirley's Way very interesting. With me at the table is Mike Mulrooney, who is representing Shirley's Way, which is a charity in my district and has been around for a while and done really, really good work. And he has some really interesting insights into the current law and some suggestions for maybe how we can tweak it a bit.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. It's an honor, and yes, we started.
Can you make sure your mic is on? Thank you.
Again, thank you so much for having me, Representative Jenkins, and everybody here for allowing me to come today and talk about what we've done. My mom died in 2013 from cancer, and before they wheeled her out, I promised her that we would try to do something different. Weeks before she died, people came to visit, and family and friends, and talked about the horrible circumstances that people they knew who were fighting cancer were in. And we're talking about everyday basic necessities of life. So people who are fighting cancer typically are too sick. The drugs make them so sick they can't work. And in some cases, it forces them into situations where they could lose their home or be sitting in the dark because their utilities are cut off. So again, as my mom was wheeled out, I told her we would really try hard to do something different, and I wasn't sure what that was going to be. But I jumped in feet first and started a 501c3 organization. Actually, I started a nonprofit and went to the company I work for and asked, can they support me? And she said, "Are you a 501c3?" I said, I don't know what that is, but I'll figure it out. So we started and figured out how to become a 501c3 and started Shirley's Way. And we take the money that we raise and we give it back to the community in the form of rent, mortgage, utilities, food, basic necessities of life. And because of charitable gaming, we had to wait 3 years to get our license, but because of charitable gaming, we've given away over $1.2 million since we started under my mom's name. But just like not knowing what a 501c3 was when I started, I didn't really understand charitable gaming, so that was an education in itself. And the folks at the Charitable Gaming Office have been very gracious to me. I'm sure Doug, I worry him out with questions all the time because I'm constantly sending him ideas and things that we can do. But as we go through some of the laws, some of the things that Representative Jenkins and I have talked about would really help organizations raise more money. I grew up Catholic, and if you're Catholic, you know that they do all kinds of raffles and split the pots and things like that, and I've got an IT background, so I thought, why aren't we doing this online? And simple searches on the internet will tell you that it's perfectly illegal to do raffles online. But working with Doug and some of those folks over at Charitable Gaming, we've worked out a way to make this happen. So we've been selling tickets online and doing raffles online. It opens it up for organizations to raise money remotely. And given the world we live in today, with COVID and everything going on in the world, it's much easier for somebody to sit in their living room and buy a ticket to a raffle than it is to try and go someplace and buy tickets. So we've done that. We started a raffle several years ago called the Queen of Hearts. Actually Henry told me about it, and I blew him off in the Charitable Gaming Commission. I didn't listen to him. And he said, what you really need to do is a Queen of Hearts. And I said, okay, yeah. Well, I was wrong. We found in Chicago they did a Queen of Hearts raffle, and it got up to $7 million. And I don't know what they do with the money in Chicago in that little area, but it was pretty incredible to watch the community rally and buy tickets. So we started a Queen of Hearts here in Louisville, and the pot total got up to almost $800,000. And it was incredible to watch thousands of people coming in and buying tickets and thousands of dollars in cash sitting around. And it made me kind of nervous to the point where we had to hire several officers to come just in case. At one time, we had $80,000 in cash sitting around, And you talk about really being nervous and worried to death that the cash would disappear. We had to have 10 to 20 volunteers at any given time to handle all this money, and not $1 disappeared. It was pretty incredible to watch. But anyway, that was our first really delve into charitable gaming. We started a split the pot raffle, and that went over pretty well, and it still does. We do those from time to time. But I bring that up because the 40% rule that we've talked about, and it's never really been a big factor for us because our raffle kicked off so fast. But if you've ever ran a business and you've been to business school, they teach you that typically in most normal businesses, it takes 2 to 5 years to finally turn a profit. And I totally understand the reason why the 40% law was put into place at the beginning. But given COVID and everything else, to expect a charity to draw a crowd, build up a crowd, retain the crowd, and make 40% profit in the bingo world or other worlds, it's pretty tough. It's stressful, actually. It's very stressful for the organization because they don't focus on what they're trying to do. They're focusing on trying to make sure they can cover that 40%. So that's one thing that I would love to see changed. Given our online presence, before Henry told me that we should look in the Queen of Hearts and look what they're doing in other states, I started a online raffle site called Go Halfers. If you've ever been, again, to a Catholic event, they'll walk up, sell tickets, and say, hey, do you want to go half? I'd say, sure. So you'd buy tickets. And I was trying to think of a name for this, and I pulled over on the side of the road one day and went to GoDaddy.com and looked up Go Halfers to see if it was available. So we set up a Split the Pot website to sell tickets online. And it works great. But during COVID, an emergency regulation was passed to allow us to use random number generators, and it worked beautifully. From having to have 10 to 20 volunteers to process all your tickets to being able to just run a raffle with 2 to 3 people by selling tickets online and using a random number generator was a beautiful thing. It was so easy. But this opens up, and actually other states are doing this, and I know how they're doing it in arenas and things like that, but we have the websites built to be able to buy your tickets online from any mobile device, and you can participate in the raffle. But there's all kinds of opportunities for organizations to make money with online raffles and help their cause at sporting events and concerts and things like that. But the random number generator, we would export the data. We would use calculator.net, pick a winner, and we streamed everything to YouTube so everybody can see exactly what goes on. And basically created a small TV show that we do a couple times a week. But we have all the websites built for that. Again, selling tickets for cash is just dangerous, especially with what we went through last year. We actually canceled a couple of our raffles because some of the protests that were going on around Louisville, we were just really worried about having so much cash on hand with our raffles. Allow us to run raffles for other organizations. Because of COVID, a lot of the church picnics and Catholic schools reached out to us and said, we can't have our picnic this year. Can you help us? How have you done this online raffle thing? And we were prepared to help them. They were going to make a donation back to us for using our websites, and we're not allowed to do that. But as we're driving in here today, Kelly got a message from a for-profit organization that wants to help her husband's football team raise money for a 20% profit. So this for-profit company is helping this football team raise money, and they raised about $9,800 in the first day, but this company gets 20% of that. So a for-profit company is allowed to do this for old organizations, but as a nonprofit with some very, very good built websites to run raffles for schools, we're not allowed to do that. But that's another thing that I would love to see change. There's so many small charity organizations that don't have the resources or the ability to build these websites, and we're perfectly able to help them with their online raffles. Level the playing field. We got into charitable gaming, obviously, and when we had such a large crowd with our Queen of Hearts, we started looking into gaming machines. And I didn't even know these existed. But the E-Tab, pull-tab machines are incredible. They're a great way for organizations to take a few machines, set them in their office. People love them. And I'm just asking that we try to level the playing field on that. We saw some machines that are unbelievable that would really be a game changer for us. People love our machines. They love to play them. But our constant complaint is the graphics and the size of the screen and the sound, and they just don't look like what I'm used to playing. But we love what your organization is doing, so we want to play your machines and support you. But I know there's some bigger, better machines out there that would really, people would absolutely love them. So we're asking that we level the playing field on that and give us the ability to have the bigger, nicer machines that they have in other states. It would be a huge game changer for organizations like us that are trying to raise money for a specific cause. Give us the ability to put pull tab vending machines. I don't know if you've ever saw them, but we have them in our office. It's a pull tab vending machine with columns. People love pull tabs. Like it or not, they love pull tabs. And since we've done this, I've got businesses and bars and locations all over the area that are wanting us to put pull tab vending machines in their spots. But the way the law, the reg is written, we have to have a volunteer on site to pay out any winners from the pull tabs. And it's very difficult to find somebody to sit there all day long for free to pay out somebody that wins on pull tabs. And I think the last thing, and I believe y'all have a copy of this document in there, is adjusting the fee for gaming. If you look at the sheet, I believe it's included. If not, I can be glad to hand you one. The fee that we pay on gaming is not based on cash in. It's based on total. I don't know what the wording is for it. But if somebody's playing our machines and they win and they don't cash out, the winnings add to the total. It keeps adding to the total. So cash in, we actually brought in, since we had the machines, $1.9 million. We should pay the fee on that 1.9. But instead, cash replays, money replays, we paid the fee on $7.4 million. That's a difference of about $40-something thousand in fees off of the machines that we have. So I'm asking that we change that fee to cash in, not based on the replays. And Joni knows this, if the area that we live in thought for a minute that we brought in $7.9 million and we only gave away $1 million, they would never support us ever again. We live in a very loyal area that firmly believes in what people are doing, and they have a lot of trust in what Shirley's Way is doing for the community. But if they once thought that we actually brought in $7.9 million, they would really start losing their minds over that. But again, it's we paid $57,000 in fees based on cash replay versus actual cash in. We should have paid a $14,000 fee back for the gaming. So I think that's about it that I have today, unless you want to talk about something else.
Well, there one other incident that was brought to my attention, where for the smaller charities, there needs to be an exemption for extraordinary situations. Mm-hmm. I had one charity that bought all the equipment, they contracted with a bingo hall, they expended a lot of money, and that bingo hall went out of business. There was no way for that year that they were going to reach their 40%. So I think giving some discretion to the commissioner to review situations like that and give some relief to some of these, especially the smaller charities that are on such a narrower margin.
That's fine. I understand. Makes sense. And we did get your information in everyone's packet. And so I appreciate that. Let me see if there's any questions from anyone. Anyone remotely have any questions? I think there's a few things in here that we might be able to get done in the short term, and so let's continue this conversation. And I may bring in our hopefully burgeoning charitable gaming expert representative Timony in on it. So thank you.
Thank you very
much.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to have Ambrose Wilson. He's got, I believe, a presentation with regards to the 40% retention rule, and he's going to educate the committee on it.
Chairman Koenig, Chairman Schickel, it's a pleasure to be here. I was pleased that Representative Jenkins invited us to talk about the 40% rule. I have with me Doug Harden, who is the department counsel. We've prepared a PowerPoint to hopefully better explain the 40% retention, and we'd be happy to answer any questions after that, and I'll turn it over to Doug.
Please introduce yourselves for the record.
Ambrose Wilson, Commissioner, Department of Charitable Gaming.
I'm Doug Harden. I'm the staff attorney at the Department of Charitable Gaming.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Am I sharing my screen yet, or let's see. Share screens. Oh, that one. There we go. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Okay, this is our brief explanation of what the 40% retention rule is in charitable gaming. Let me use the keys here. So what is it? It's a statutory requirement. I've got the text of the statute there on the screen. It basically means that a charity's net receipts have to be at least 40% of their adjusted gross receipts. It's an accounting principle. So there's a common misconception about the 40% rule. It doesn't mean a charity has to spend 40% of the money they make toward their purpose. A charity has to spend all of their net receipts toward their charitable purpose. The 40% rule is another way to say it is that after a charity has what's left over after they pay out the winners, they can't exceed 60% of that money on the cost of doing charitable gaming. So the formula is basically you take your net receipts, divide that by your adjusted gross receipts, and that has to be greater than or equal to 40%. And what do those terms mean? Start with gross receipts. That's all the money a charity takes in. So if you sell a raffle ticket for $1, that's $1 of gross receipts, right? Adjusted gross receipts is you take your gross receipts and subtract the payout. So if it's a cash prize, the cash you pay out is subtracted from your gross, that you arrive at your adjusted gross. If a charity buys a prize, like a lot of charities auction a raffle off like a Yeti cooler or something, the cost of buying that cooler would be deducted from the gross receipts to get to adjusted gross. And finally, the net receipts are basically the profit the charity makes. That's, you go from gross to adjusted gross and subtract the expenses. On the screen here is a list of what expenses are allowed by statute and regulation, things like rent, gaming supplies, utilities, insurance, advertising, janitorial services, security, things like that. They're all enumerated in statute and regulation. So to give an example, let's say we have a charity called the Human Fund, and the Human Fund is licensed to operate here in Kentucky, and they're going to do a 50-50 split the pot raffle. I see some of you laughing. I think you got my Seinfeld reference there. So they're doing a 50-50 split the pot raffle, which means everybody's going to pay $1 for a ticket to the raffle. However much money is generated, they're going to draw a winner. That person's going to get half of what's generated. So say they sell 2,000 tickets for $1 a piece. That's $2,000 in gross receipts. And they're going to pay the winner out $1,000, half the pot. So now the Human Fund has $1,000 of adjusted gross. And to get from adjusted gross to net, they're going to subtract their expenses. So let's say they spent $500 to advertise the raffle, to rent space, to have the drawing, those sorts of things. Subtract that. Now they have $500 in net receipts. So your retention percentage is your net receipts are $500. That would be 50% of the $1,000 adjusted gross. So they've complied. They're above 40%. And Representative Jenkins mentioned this a minute ago, but what happens if a charity violates the 40% rule? A lot of administrative violations, especially in charitable gaming, there's by regulation and by statute, there's a range of penalties, maybe a warning or not to exceed a $500 fine, something like that. As an agency, we have some discretion on how much of a penalty we should seek. The 40% retention statute, though, everything is very clearly enumerated in the statute. And it all depends on what the retention percentage is. So, for example, here, if a charity is between 35 and 39.9, 6 months probation, they have to submit a detailed financial plan explaining how they're going to get above 40% next year. If they drop down between 30 and 34.9, that becomes 1 year instead of 6 months of probation. If they go down to 25 to 29.9, it's 1 year probation. They have to undergo training. They're subject to quarterly review. And where charities really get in, the real penalty comes if a charity is under 40% for 2 consecutive years or under 25% for 1 year. That's a mandatory 1 year suspension of their charitable gaming license. And they have to go through the financial plan and the probation when they get reinstated. And it's just, we tell our charities sometimes we're sorry, but this is just, it's just mathematics. You know, the statute doesn't give us the option to consider, you know, mitigating circumstances. It's just, what is your retention percentage, and there's a penalty that goes with that. And what are the benefits of the 40% requirement? One thing, it ensures that charitable organizations are not operating on a thin margin. It doesn't cost so much to run charitable gaming that they don't have a lot left to spend toward their charitable purpose. It prevents charities from spending money on frivolous or unnecessary expenses. A lot of times when our audit staff works with an organization that's in 40% trouble, they identify, you know, maybe you're spending too much on advertising, or maybe you can find a better you can renegotiate your lease with the bingo hall, or you can move to a different bingo hall to reduce those rates. So trying to cut down on unnecessary expenses is one benefit of it. And another thing is that it does give our licensed charitable organizations some leverage when they have to negotiate the cost of bingo supplies or the cost to rent a facility, because those are things that increase an organization's expenses, decrease their net receipts, and make it more likely they're going to have 40% issues. And so being able to say, well, if we charge us too much, we're not going to be able to keep our license and you're going to lose us as a customer, does provide the charities a good bit of leverage when they're negotiating. Common reasons charities don't meet the 40%, kind of like we talked about a minute ago. They pay too much for certain expenses. Bingo supplies, facility rent, that's one of the major expenses. And also they conduct, there's different types of charitable gaming that organizations can conduct. Bingo, as I understand it, is not really how charities make a lot of money, but that's the fun event that draws people in, because, you know, the prize amount is set, and how much the charity makes depends on how many people show up. Raffles, if a charity buys a really expensive prize and doesn't sell enough tickets, they could end up in trouble. Pull tabs, Mr. Mulroney talked about this a minute ago, especially electronic pull tabs. There's basically a set profit. If you sell a whole box of pull tabs, you're guaranteed to make X% profit. The way the games are structured. 50-50 raffles, same thing. You know you're going to make 50% there. And this is a graph kind of showing the last, 3 years prior to COVID. Our department usually has between 500 and 600 licensees, and the top line on this graph is how many organizations were found to have violated or had a retention percentage under 40. And you can see that is generally between 20 and 30 charities out of 500. And the number that gets suspended either for being under 25% in 1 year or under 40% in 2 straight years has hovered around 10 for the last 3 years. And then that's only 3 to 5% of all of our licensees. This slide shows what would have happened last year if not for House Bill 226, which we're thankful to Representative Timoney for sponsoring and for the General Assembly for enacting. We would have been looking at over 70 instead of about 30, and looking at over 40 organizations that would have faced a 1-year suspension had we not given charities that 1-year reprieve. And so far this year, we only have data through the first quarter, and So far, charities are doing well. We only have 11, according to the latest numbers, that are under 40, and only 3 that are under 25%. So far, things are going well for our charities. And that's all we have. If you have any questions for us, we'll be glad to answer.
Very good. Thank you. I believe Senator Higdon has a comment remotely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Commissioner, I just wanted to thank you. There's, as you know, with charitable gaming, a lot of small organizations, there's always questions, and your folks have always been available to answer those questions and resolve issues. And I just want to tell you, I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Birch.
Can this 40% be averaged out over a quarter of a year? Like it could be 30% one week and 40%, but somewhere it's got to average 40% or lower, right?
The 40% is based on the entire calendar year.
Right. It's not something that every time they exceed 40%, they get fined or they. Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Mr.
It's a yearly calculation.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you all for the presentation.
Very much.
Appreciate it.
Have a nice day.
Representative Blanton and his guests are up next. Senator Adams, you still there? Okay. She's been in and out. All right. As long as we know she was here. Representative Blanton, the floor is yours. Please introduce your guests for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm John Blanton from the 92nd District, and I have with me with the dietitians, Miss Laura Park, and I'll turn it over to her and let her introduce her colleague.
Hi, I'm Laura Arnold Parks, and I'm a registered dietitian in long-term care, have been for 25 years, and I'm current board chair of our profession, and I have with me.
My name is Ann Simmons. I'm the secretary of the Board of Licensure for Dietitians. I am the clinical nutrition manager at Owensboro Health Regional Hospital and have been there for 18 years.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, we simply want to present to you all today a piece of legislation that I filed this last session and follow up during the interim, dealing with fees for dietitians and nutritionists in Kentucky. Unfortunately, much like in other areas, inflation has overcome the cost of fees, and we're looking for an increase, and I will turn it over to the ladies to explain that and the need.
Hi. So it's pretty simple. We have a certain amount that we spend each year, and as a board, we're breaking even. And with that said, the last year we didn't even have any travel expenditures. So our concern is that if we don't do a fee increase, not a large one, we have discussed with the board members that we feel like even if we just went from $50 to $75, it would solve our problem. So we're not talking about anything drastic. In Kentucky, on average, I think the board, the annual fees are $71. So if we went to 75, that would be about right. We're very conservative as a board, but we certainly want to have a cushion. We do have a few legal issues on the horizon, some regulation changes we need to make, and we know that that is going to cost a bit.
And we haven't changed our fees in 33 years.
We've never
since 1988.
We've never changed them.
I like that.
Yeah.
So, and Mr. Chairman, if I may, also, my bill that I introduced last session actually increased it and gave them some latitude to allow them to go up to as much as 150, so they don't have to keep coming back if this were to arise in the future with inflation or issues. But it gives them a little latitude to make that adjustment. So I think their plans are to go up like 25 now, but if in 5 years from now or 10 years from now they need to go up $10 more, they would have that latitude.
All right. Anything further? Okay, a couple things from me. One, if you could, as a board, send me your budget and details over the last few years. Kind of requested that from folks for the last few years that have asked for such a thing. Two, I'm going to give you a recommendation, which is that we've been having boards just put their fees in reg rather than taking a fee vote all the time in statute and then having boards have to come back. So I think this committee would look more favorably upon allowing the board to set their fees by regulation going forward. So if you want to file that bill, that would probably move quicker.
Okay.
So Senator Higdon has another comment.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to echo what you just said, and I'm with you 100%. We need to, I think the best way to do these type things is through regs and allow them to set their fees. They're accountable to their, I guess, the folks that they license, and I know they'll keep it in line. But so that's, I agree with you 100%. Let's put it in regs and give them the ability to adjust their fees.
Thank you, Senator. And from actions from this legislature, we now have more say over what passes in and out of the regulation. So anything further on this topic? Seeing none, that's it. Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you, Mr.
all
Chairman,
coming all that
members of the
way.
committee.
Last but not least, we have Julie Campbell from Board of Cosmetology and her guest. They are both remote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and
are.
members of the committee. We appreciate you taking the time to hear from us today, all the way remotely. What we've discovered in the ever-changing world of cosmetic medicine and medical aesthetics is that Kentucky is severely lagging behind and has absolutely no regulatory framework and oversight on very dangerous procedures in that world. There is no oversight on training for laser work, invasive lasers. There's no framework for oversight on injectables. The word Botox cosmetic is out there and it sounds innocuous, but it is a black box warning product. It is a toxin being injected into the face of individuals, and it is extremely dangerous that there's oversight either on fees for safety and infection control, nor on the training that is required to allow such modalities to occur. We are hoping to put that together so that each board has regulatory oversight from their side of things to balance it, so there is no battling for turf, so to speak, amongst the agencies, but allowing the agencies that way to put the framework in to make sure that the Commonwealth is safe. I've provided a document in your packet, and it shows what is considered to be medical cosmetic as opposed to just regular cosmetic, and some ideas. And it's kind of the wild, wild west out there. Everything is being done from fillers to Botox to European thread lifting with, which are invasive procedures with no medical license needed, no cosmetology license needed, no training whatsoever. And it's gotten to a critical point where it's getting very dangerous. And with the large explosion of these med spas, it just is getting very difficult for all the boards to, we have no way to hold individuals accountable. And at some point, if there is an accidental death, dismemberment, severe side effects, you as legislators, I can only imagine, will be looking at us going, where was somebody on this? So we'd like to, we've outlined some of that at this point, defining the scopes of practice, FDA modalities, approvals, and the levels of that. And we are very thoughtfully researching the details of those to put in some oversight to protect those in the public.
All right, and is your guest with you from Board of Medical Licensure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, sir. This is
Leanne?
Leanne.
Okay.
This is Leanne Diakoff, General Counsel.
All right. Do you have anything to add?
I'm just here to speak in support of what Ms. Campbell has said. I think she summed it up very well when she said it really is the wild, wild west. I know here at the medical board, I get a call weekly. In fact, last week I got 2 calls on this very issue. People, not only our licensees, but just persons in general, looking for some direction as to what is required to own and operate a med spa in Kentucky and who can operate there. And I have nothing to point them to. It's very piecemeal right now. If you're a doctor, it's one thing. If you're a nurse, it's another thing. If you're an esthetician, it's another thing. And some of those are also conflicting. It's just very hard, and it would be very helpful from an agency standpoint and from a public safety standpoint to have one concise statutory structure that defines what a med spa is, who can be there, and what they can do. And so we support Ms. Campbell's effort to help narrow that down for Kentucky.
Excellent, thank you. And certainly we are taking this up and hearing in the interim so that if something is put together for next year's session, it's been properly vetted. Representative Miller has questions.
Actually, it's probably more of a caution, and that is my understanding, and I could be wrong, that there are no rules related to tattoo parlors, and they're going into the same area. So just be careful when you write this that you're not inadvertently grabbing tattoo parlors, because then we'll have the people at the gates on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Miller. We don't want it in the tattooing world whatsoever. We are most assuredly concerned about these other procedures that that don't have any framework at this point.
Thank you. Any other questions for our guests? Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Julia, one quick question. What have other states done? Has somebody figured this out?
We have pulled different legislation from other states to build our definitions. We've worked with national organizations as well. There is some legislation out there. Tennessee put some things through or had it on the agenda. I don't know that it ever went through. Iowa, Connecticut. So we are pulling from other states and what they're right or we feel have done wrong to help reduce barriers and make sure that we aren't impeding business but are protecting the public.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome, Senator. Anything further from anyone, in person or online? Going once, going twice. Thank you both very much for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. Having come to the end of the agenda, we will stand adjourned. The next meeting is, it's at back of my script. If I would read my script, I would know the answer to that. August 12th, 10 a.m. Be there, be square. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bye.